The images are harrowing. In Gaza City, armed men blindfolded a group of Palestinians, forced them to their knees, and shot them in front of a crowd. Independent monitors and major newsrooms have verified the footage and its location. Hamas's internal security forces have reappeared on the streets and, under the rubric of restoring order, have carried out public killings of alleged collaborators and rival clan members. This is not resistance. It's terror directed at Palestinians. It violates the right to life, the prohibition of summary execution, and any claim to due process. At the same time, there are new allegations against Israel. Under the ceasefire's body exchange, Gaza hospitals received scores of Palestinian corpses. Doctors at Nasser Hospital reported blindfolds, blindings, and single gunshot wounds to the head of many bodies. The International Criminal Court is already examining war crime allegations on both sides, and these claims require urgent independent investigation. Justice cannot be selective. So, how should we speak honestly about a war that is grim by nature and now moving from siege to contested security control? There are 5 anchor points. Firstly, we need to make it very clear that extrajudicial killing is illegal, whoever does it. The common Article 3 of the Geneva Conventions prohibits the passing of sentences and the carrying out of executions without previous judgment by a regularly constituted court. Hamas's street executions breach this baseline rule. So would any summary killing by Israeli forces. Law is symmetric, even when power is asymmetric. And of course, it's quite clear that Hamas is a terrorist organization, and it's exhibiting precisely that standard of behavior. The non-combatant immunity is absolute. Civilians can never be targeted. That includes Palestinians shot in the street as examples, Israelis murdered on the 7th of October, and medics or detainees killed in custody. UN mechanisms have already documented patterns of grave violations and demanded accountability across the board. Third point, command responsibility matters. Leaders who order, instigate, or fail to prevent such crimes face liability. That applies to Hamas commanders orchestrating purges and to Israeli officials if custodial killings or abuse are proven by independent inquiry. The standard is the same. Who knew, what was ordered, and what was done to prevent or punish, and who encouraged such behavior. And of course, the video footage of Ben Gvir taunting the activists and Greta Thunberg and people doesn't play well for the allegations made against Israel. The selective outrage corrodes credibility. Palestinian human rights bodies, notably the Independent Commission for the Human Rights in Palestine, have condemned Hamas's executions as a gross violation and demanded an immediate end. Western and regional actors must be equally explicit, denouncing Hamas's crimes against Palestinians and pressing Israel on credible abuse allegations, including the treatment of detainees and the handling of bodies. This is essential. Consistency is not a luxury, it's the only route to trust. And finally, 5, the ceasefire implementation needs real security, not revenge. As Hamas asserts control and rival clans mobilize, the risk of intra-Palestinian violence rises. The United States has told Hamas to stop shooting civilians and to disarm. European governments are condemning the executions. None of this will hold without a professional, rights-compliant policing arrangement, independent monitoring, and unimpeded aid. Otherwise, a dirty war becomes an even dirtier peace. You can support Palestinian rights without excusing Hamas. Public executions and leg shootings are crimes against the very people whose liberation many of us claim to champion. Say it plainly and make it clear that Palestinian rights groups are saying it already. Its allegations around the treatment of bodies, detainees, medics and sieges must be independently investigated, not waved away. The Guardian's reporting on returned corpses underscores why scrutiny is non-negotiable. But the most important thing is, and I hope people who are coming out in support of Palestinian rights are fully aware of the atrocities committed at the moment by Hamas. It is possible to reject the logic of vengeance on both sides. Vengeance is not strategy, it destroys law, it corrodes discipline, and it guarantees cycles of atrocity. What we saw from the Israeli side is a descent from reasonable defence to unreasonable revenge. What we've seen from the Hamas side is, in the last few days, is the revival of a clear demonstration of terrorism, this time perpetrated against their own people. Responsible governments and movements have jobs to do this week. They must demand the immediate cessation of extrajudicial killings in Gaza and support an impartial mechanism to document and preserve evidence with protection for witnesses. They must bank credible, independent investigations into alleged Israeli abuses, including the treatment of the dead and detainees, with full forensic access. Cooperation with the ICC and United Nations inquiries is essential. This means that the Hamas representatives in Qatar and Turkey and Egypt need to be pressed to in turn put pressure on their activists in Gaza. All security arrangements need to be tied down to law. Any interim policing must be vetted, trained, and monitored on human rights standards, or it will be another militia in uniform. And of course, it's very dangerous because of the presence of a terrorist organisation with guns. The humanitarian access needs to be available now. Law and order are prerequisites for aid flow, but aid is also a prerequisite for law and order. Open crossings, deconflict routes, forensic and medical capacity in Gaza's hospitals. There needs to be one voice against collective punishment and against summary violence. That means saying two truths at once. Hamas's executions are abhorrent crimes, and credible allegations against Israeli actors must be examined and prosecuted where proven. There will be those today who use Hamas's crimes to launder every excess of Israeli power, and those who cite Israeli abuses to minimize Hamas's brutality. Both moves are evasions. If your standard only ever cuts one way, it's not a standard. The only sustainable position is universal. Civilians are not targets, prisoners are not to be abused, bodies are not props, and no cause licenses murder without trial. The path out of this is unbelievably narrow. It runs through law, evidence, and restraint, and there is no shortcut through rage. There is no shortcut through the recognition that there has been an appalling abuse of international law and basic humanity, an appalling ethical abuse by both Hamas and by the Israeli High Command. Where the buck stops, that's a different matter. But the images coming out are harrowing and not, sadly not unexpected.